So what happened 60 years ago is fighter pilots, particularly John Boyd, created this idea of the OODA loop. And when we talk about a loop, we're talking about iteration, which is to say, hey, observe the world around you, position yourself, make a decision, and then act, and then observe, and what happened, and then change. So you're always bringing this observation piece in. 30 years ago at Afterburner, we added a step, which is intention. So an OODA loop is great for stuff that already exists and you're already observing. But when you're creating futures that don't exist, you've got to have some intention there, right? Missionization gives you the ability to be utterly focused, completely stepped up as the best version of yourself, and then the freedom to relax a little bit, the freedom to just have a fun conversation. A CEO should be impact driven, but at the same time, accessible as a human being.
Hey, welcome to this week's episode of The Freedom Experience. I'm your host, John Moncrief, and my guest today is Christian Boucousis. He's a former fighter pilot, turned entrepreneur, author of The Afterburner Advantage, and the man behind Afterburner, which is a performance coaching company that's worked with 3,500 plus businesses, including Super Bowl winning NFL teams. So in our conversation, Boo talks about the shift from firefighting to flawless execution and why most teams are drowning in noise and overwork, and how fighter pilot systems can create freedom and clarity in business. And it isn't just theory. He's done it, he's lost it, and he's rebuilt it. So we cover three big themes in this episode. One is that transition from overwhelm to impact, and why most businesses are operating at 60% efficiency without even realizing it. We talk about the flex model, plan, brief, execute, debrief, and how applying this to every day can drive compounding growth and focus. And then we talk about what freedom really means as a leader and why it's not about working less, but about having a team you trust to execute with you. So let's get into it with Boo.
Boo, welcome to the show. I have hit the record button. We're on with. It's all good. Welcome. So good to have you on.
It's an absolute pleasure, mate. I'm very excited. I believe in what you do, and I also implicitly believe that where everyone is in their community right now, there is an opportunity to step it up.
Yeah.
Without a lot of effort, without capital, just purely by optimizing their cognitive models and the way they work together inside their organization. Most organizations are overweight with people by about 30 to 40% because people spend so much time mitigating all the inefficiencies and creating the noise. And if you start to build a system that removes noise and streamlines everything, you start the way fighter pilots do, because it's a life and death thing. You translate that into business. There's just this really simple opportunity to raise it up. We call it the transition from overwhelm to impact, and the ability to get more done with less effort. And let's be honest, who doesn't want that right now in this crazy world?
Yeah. So, like for the audience, I've just picked up your book Afterburner and busy reading that, and it sort of talks about you at the time that you're a fighter pilot. I was amazed by the technology that's in your helmet, the amount of data that aircraft and the aircraft around are feeding into into your mind. It really feels like you're connected to the machine, right? And I guess you've shifted from being in that on top of those two jet engines to now leading a company called Afterburner. And the book, by the way, is The Afterburner Advantage. But tell us a little bit about how you've sort of gone from fighter pilot to where you are now, helping 3,500 odd businesses out there, including 2 NFL teams who've gone on to win the Super Bowl, and just helping thousands of leaders to perform under pressure and lead with intention.
Yeah, it's a funny old thing, isn't it? It's sometimes you can be as intentional and focused as your life, purpose-driven, and circumstances beyond your control kind of ruin it for you, right? So, I just wanted to be a fighter pilot. That was it. From the age of 5, I had no wavering on that goal. On paper, I should never have been a fighter pilot. I mean, I did 12th grade twice. I dropped out of college. I really struggled at school. I recently diagnosed with adult ADHD because my son was having a problem, and the school said, well, it's normally a hereditary thing, so we would like you to get tested. And I got tested, and it's like, all of a sudden so much made sense in terms of academics, right?
And you're still flying with ADHD. I mean,
yeah. Well, look, and I actually think all fighter pilots have it because the hyper-focused version, not the ADD. And the thing about, people with ADHD is if they have something to focus on, they're really good. If they have to create the things to focus on, they're really bad. And there's an interesting study done on that in 2014 with UC Berkeley and Harvard got together. It's a study called Just Think. And in this study, they put a whole bunch of people, different age groups, into a white room with a white chair. And they asked them to have whether or not they enjoyed the experience. And it was between 6 and 15 minutes. And overwhelmingly, people found it a pretty average experience. And then they transitioned and they got them to sit at home. And they did that for the same period of time. And they didn't find it any more enjoyable just sitting doing nothing, right, for 6 to 15 minutes. Then one of the folks that was on the study admitted to cheating and turning on the TV. So they asked a whole bunch of people, did anyone cheat? And yeah, I cheated. I put on the TV too. And then they decided, you know what, let's try something else. We'll put them back in the white room and we'll put them with a big red button on the table, and they're going to get an electric shock if they hit the button. And 75% of men and 28% of women would rather have an electric shock than stuck with their own thoughts. And what I've learned about ADHD is we all have a little bit of it, right? And one of the findings of the study was they gave people in the room something to think about, and then they gave the others nothing to think about, and just how difficult it is to be with your own thoughts if you don't have direction, you don't have intention, right? You don't have something to think about. I mean, one dude hit the button 190 times. So you have this issue, with humanity around the reason why there's so much depth to that question, having purpose and being intentional, because the way the brain works, if you think of it as a plasma ball, and if you put 10 fingers on a plasma ball, the electricity kind of jumps around everywhere, but you put one finger on a plasma ball and you get this really strong piece of static electricity. And the brain's no different, right? It's a big ball of electricity, and neural pathways need direction, and intention is a direction. So once we become intentional, we create it. So if you look at my intention to become a fighter pilot, I became one. I was even short-sighted, but my passion to become a fighter pilot and the way I approached the conversation with the ophthalmologist who told me I was mildly short-sighted was, look, my whole purpose in life is to become a fighter pilot. And I managed to convince him to break the rules and give me perfect vision to get in.
Wow.
And in business, sales, if you're so tied to your belief and you're fully committed, people feel that. They feel that in you. And if you're a CEO of a company, the point of engaging people and having them on board is, a lot of people are just searching for a belief system. They're sitting in a white room with nothing to think about. So if you're, and they're going to hit the electric button if someone doesn't give them direction. And that's why intention is so important, right? So for me, I managed to become a fighter pilot, even though I had terrible academics, because I just wanted it so bad, and they picked that up. And that's what they gave me a chance when I was 18. I started when I was 19. I flew for 11 years, and then the universe decided to bestow upon me an autoimmune condition that was completely the opposite of how I needed to be as a fighter. It's like really bad arthritis. And when you fly fighter jets at high G, the bones are compressing all the time. The joints, not the bones, but the joints between the bones are compressing. And it was just a horrible, painful existence for me. So I had to leave when I was...
How did you handle that? I read that in the book, and I read your story to becoming a fighter pilot and how important it was to you. But how did you handle that point in your life that this was over?
Pragmatically, I guess. It's one of the things, part of being a fighter pilot is they really kind of dehumanize you, because they realize all the thing that kills fighter pilots is all the human traits we have that aren't delivering us to what we want to be as humans: distractions, procrastination, getting emotional about things that aren't worth getting emotional about. So part of being a fighter pilot is presented with a problem, how do you solve it, right? And you go through this deliberate process of solving the problem. And unfortunately, that's what we're losing. We're losing that skill set with digital constantly serving up information. We just look and read things and take it as the truth, and we don't think about it.
So your way of dealing with that setback was to use your training almost to use the process
unconsciously. I don't think there's all this, so much of us in this space, we're talking about people being intentional. It's like, but I was intentional because I was conditioned that way. Like there's always an objective. So I didn't think, I need to go read some books and get intentional about this. I'm like, oh, well, this is not good. And there's a bigger power at play in the universe. And 5 years before, or maybe 3 years before that event, I just happened to meet someone, South African in the UK, who was an officer in the British Army. And we just, the typical too much whiskey, sitting in a broom closet with bunny rabbit slippers on. We decided that one day we'll start a business. So when that happened to me, I reached out to Tom and said, look, dude, I got to leave the Air Force. Remember that conversation we had? Yeah, I remember that. Do you want to start a business together? And he's like, yep. So we spent the next 15 months while I was doing my medical discharge, and I was an instructor at the War College, which was an amazing experience as well, just to learn, just to get out of that fighter pilot bubble into something bigger.
And teach people, right?
Yeah, and teach and coach. And, so I used to teach, I was the Air Force expert, and I used to teach you how to plan massive war campaigns using Air Force assets. And then, so I got to meet everyone from intelligence service, and I was working with 1- and 2-star generals, and I started to understand problem solving at a very philosophical level as well as a tangible level, right? And that's where I learned a lot about crafting intention and how to deal with the unknown. And the military does that really well. Like, the military is really, really good at understanding that a plan is only as good as the first moment you move over the front line, right? So that was great. So I used that. I got some qualifications around project management and planning, and I really started to get really deep into strategic planning as a tool to deliver results rather than just as to navel gaze, or as a CIO at a company I work with once said, intellectually masturbate. Was to really start to get action. So, and then through that, Tom and I would get on a call every night. Skype was just invented, so we were on Skype. And we thought, look, for guys like us, we don't have any business skills. We don't have anything to offer really inside our country. He lived in the UK. I lived in Australia. So we said, it's either Afghanistan or Iraq for us. Like, that's it. Like, there's. So we did a little bit of a case study. Tom, being the army, was better than me, so he went to Iraq and then he went to Afghanistan. He's like, look, I think Afghanistan is the place. He got a job for a company in Afghanistan during my last year in the Air Force, started researching, getting the lay of the land. And he actually pretty much got us a contract before we even started. So the opportunity for a contract. And so he left, I left the Air Force. We moved into a tiny little pensione in Afghanistan. And then we started to try and win this deal, and we won it. It was a $6 million deal to provide Gurkhas, British Army Gurkhas, to help the road building companies that were trying to build a road between Kabul and Kandahar. So that kind of started it. But really, if people said, what did you guys do? Well, we didn't really know. We just helped people. And that's what we did. And we just kept morphing the business, adapting, and we got to the point where we were the go-to guys for basically getting anything done in Afghanistan. Yeah. Where we weren't good is understanding how to operate a business. We brought in a major investor because we had massive cash flow issues because we were growing so fast. And anyway, the company almost pretty much got stolen off us because big money always wins when you're dealing with companies that are turning over hundreds of millions of dollars. So that was an experience.
So it was a real learning curve that you guys went through there.
Yeah. I mean, we knew how to get things done, but we knew the sum total of zero about how to run a business, right? So that was a school of hard knocks kind of experience for us. Then I got into hotel development, built a hotel using some pretty innovative techniques. Then I moved into publishing. And then 10 years ago, I came across this company, Afterburner, and I started working with them I bought a license for Australia and then expanded into Asia. And a few years ago, the founder, who's in his 60s, decided he'd had enough, and I bought the company off him. And here I am in the US, bringing those two worlds together. So I think I'm probably the only fighter pilot on earth that's been a fighter pilot, been a business founder, worked with probably nearly 1,000 major enterprises over the last 10 years. That's probably exaggeration, maybe 500. And uniquely positioned now to see how the way a fighter pilot thinks and works really unlocks the full potential of an organization, because no organization on earth thinks and works the way we do. Never seen it. But I have seen companies that take what we have, commit to embedding it in their organization, and having phenomenal results. Like, we worked with 19 NFL teams, but only 2 of them committed to the process, and they both won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it's so important, is actually committing to the process, right?
And it's a simple process. It's literally a 4-step process. It's not hard, but it's hard from a human behavior perspective. Then in Australia, I worked with a small company that grew almost 400%. in a year just by committing to the process. And we call it debriefing. It's the big. We'll talk about that in a minute. But there's some elements of what we do that brings intentionality, not only in terms of intentionally moving forward, but we bring intentionality into the way we reflect as well, in the way that we look at the past. And as a fighter pilot, we understand that we live in the now, but you can't live in the now. You've got to be looking to the future. And the best way to approach the future is by learning what you did yesterday that worked and what didn't, and iterate and constantly refine your business model and your processes and your procedures, because there's no standing still anymore. You know, if you're sitting there and you go, hey, we've got this great CRM, it's like, cool, how are you using AI now in your CRM to optimize your prospecting? Because if you're not, what's going to happen in 2 years, the companies that are, their cost of prospect and cost of origination of a deal
going to go right down.
Going to be lower than yours, and you're going to go to business.
Yeah. So you talk about this process, and it's flawless execution and flex, and it's this iterative model, right? Where plan, brief, execute, debrief. We talked about this at the beginning. There are companies that do some planning. There are companies who don't do much planning. There are companies who do some briefing. There are companies who don't do some briefing. Most of them try and execute something, and then none of them do any kind of debriefing. And I think when you were talking about the company in Australia, you were talking about how they looked at every single thing that they did and went through this process of plan, brief, execute, debrief. So whether it was social campaign or
everything every day, every order fulfillment, every social post, every campaign that they ran, you know, and there was just really small things, you know, like they had a whole bunch of advocates of people that loved the brand, but they didn't empower those people to become a voice for them. So they created a small community, and that small community would post on their social media and expand. So there's all these things that are there that aren't visible to you and in yourself as well. Like I just call them the blind spots, right? So personally, we have a whole bunch of blind spots in our cognitive biases. In our business, there's just a whole bunch of blind spots, and businesses become stories. And the story of the business becomes the way it's fulfilled. And if the story isn't right, the business isn't right. And there's a whole bunch of myths, you know, we don't market to those people because this is why. Or we don't do orders this way because, and what happens is like one event out of 100 events, because it was a bad one, sticks in their head, and that becomes the story, right? And debriefing breaks that away. Debriefing's like, there's just stuff that you do. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And to coin, you know, Nelson Mandela, it's, I never lose, I learn, is really what we're trying to coach inside businesses here. It's like, I was having a chat yesterday with a lady from Microsoft, right? And she's like, I was really worried about, you know, flawless leadership, because you're saying leaders need to be perfect and they're not allowed to make mistakes. And it's like, no, it's the complete opposite. Flawless is accepting that you can't be perfect, but you want to get as close as you can. And we don't want our leaders to make mistakes, but we permit them to learn from them. Because if we say to our leaders, you can make mistakes, what are they going to go and do? They're going to go out and just make a whole bunch of mistakes. That's not, we take intention and we live it. So here, you're allowed to make mistakes. Sweet. I'm going to be a really shitty leader now and just make heaps of mistakes because you said it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just going back to this idea of debrief and the process that you follow, and maybe it's worth kind of stepping through each of those, because when we think about planning, I mean, I think in your book, you had the plan for Disney at one stage and the kind of intricacy of that plan. But when you think about debrief, and probably folks listening to us thinking about debrief, thinking about fighter pilots, thinking about Top Gun, Kelly McGillis and Tom Cruise in the room where they're doing the debrief after a mission, it was very one-sided in a way. And I think one of the things I picked up in the book is that the debriefing, there's almost sort of no rank in it. There's no, everybody's on the same level. And the power is being able to kind of tell it as it is in that debrief session in order to, I suppose, kind of feed into the cycle and keep iterating. And maybe just talk us through this whole flex model.
Yeah, so let's think about humans. And our model for leadership and execution is really based on the village style of leading. There's a village chief, a CEO. There's the warriors that go out and do the hunting. There's the gatherers that do the gathering. There's the witch doctor that fixes people, you know, and we have a mentoring and coaching system. We have a rite of passage. you're 14, right? Off, we're going to, so we're used to kind of this village model of leadership, which is hierarchical, it's rank based, and it's experience based. And that's great from a paternal kind of feeling part of something, but it's terrible for execution. So what happened 60 years ago is fighter pilots, particularly John Boyd, created this idea of the OODA loop. And when we talk about a loop, we're talking about iteration, which is to say, hey, observe the world around you, position yourself, make a decision, and then act, and then observe, and what happened, and then change. So you're always bringing this observation piece in. 30 years ago at Afterburner, we added a step, which is intention. So an OODA loop is great for stuff that already exists and you're already observing. But when you're creating futures that don't exist, you've got to have some intention there, right? So the first step is planning. And most companies plan. They've got quarterly plans, they've got annual plans.
Yeah.
What I call dreams. They're not really plans, right? The key with fighter pilot planning is plan small, plan often, plan with everyone, and plan for the perfect world. And then once you've done that, test it for the worst case scenario. So when we talk about planning, really planning is a community where we create a collective consciousness as well as the actions. And there's two types of planning. There's like planning for the future and planning for today. In business, that just gets all mashed up into one big mess, right? And then when we plan, we park the hierarchy and the human side of leadership, and we missionize our planning. And that means whoever's responsible for leading the number, getting the number, it might in business, it might be a sales number, it might be a production target, it might be a transformation initiative, but someone who's not the CEO and not the hierarchical leader is going to be in charge of that. And when we talk about nameless and rankless, we mean what we're aligned to here is the leader that needs to get the job done, irrespective of their position in the company. We're in service to the objective, the mission objective. So I'll be a fighter pilot, and I'll be a 22-year-old. I'm leading a mission, and I might have the squadron commander and the boss of the entire Air Force on my team. But in that plan, they're in service to me. I don't have to refer to them. I'll still call them sir. I'll be respectful. But they're going to run around and they're going to cut up paper and they're going to do all these menial tasks that I need them to do to serve me, because everyone is now in service to the objective, in service to the mission. And we have a 6-step planning process that we use. I won't go through it now.
Yeah.
Go grab the book or use the Talking Boo AI. But the 6 steps of planning is really 6 steps of structured problem solving, right? That starts with intention and then you test it all the way through until it turns into action. When we talk about briefing, unlike the way most organizations share their strategy, which is tell everyone what it is, briefing for us is a check of understanding, and it's brief. So the real point of a brief is to say, well, because we were all involved in the planning, we should kind of understand what we're about to do. So in the brief, we're just going to touch the high points. I'm going to check that you understand what your roles and responsibilities are. And in the NFL, that was a big deal. Like they have so many different plays that they run, and that they went from a philosophy of, I'm going to tell you what the play is. I want you to go research it and memorize it, and then I want you to deliver it. Whereas we bring in another loop, which is, here's the play, go memorize it. Now I want to make sure you understand it before we go out and do it. So I'm not going to tell you.
So let's be all clear. There's clarity. Like we're all clear. We're very clear on what that mission plan is.
You live in Europe. I live in Australia. We all know that one English word can mean 2 different things to somebody. So the nuance of execution is important, and the brief is how we unpick the nuance. Now, because we have really structured standards in how we do the basics, there's a general base level of knowledge that we have to work with. So most of the time it's like, if you think of a sales script should be a basic way in which you sell. However, depending on who you sell to, you've got to apply that method differently to different people.
Yeah.
You would apply it differently to someone that you're trying to retain and sell them more and you already know them, compared to how you're going to apply it to somebody you don't know. But often sales folks just use the same script in the same way, and they wonder why they don't win. So the first thing that's also missing in organizations is basic standardization of basic stuff. Your people shouldn't have to think of, how do I tie my shoelace? What does this button do? How do I use PowerPoint? Yeah, all this stuff should be like, if you don't know, here's the 10 steps. Just download it, follow the 10 steps, and you do that 10 times. It's going to become a habit. You're going to know how to use it rather than every time.
Yeah. And it becomes second nature, right? It's like,
yeah. And there's a cognitive load that comes with that. I mean, if you're using high-powered brain power on low-value tasks, you only have so much brain power. Your brain can only attend to one thing at a time. So when you automate and add to your motor memory simple things, you've got way more brain power to do creative things. And it's, again, one of the, in our sales process, one of the objections we get is, oh, you guys are just really structured. You just check lists and, we need creative people. I'm like, well, are you creative now? No. Do you want to be creative? Yes. Yeah. Okay. Well, you need standards and checklists, because you can't be creative if you're trying to figure out what does this button do. And then when we when we execute, we execute the plan. And again, there's this massive myth in business that everyone needs the freedom to do their job their own way. It's BS. Like, you don't. Because if you can have it if you want, but you're not going to be free. You're going to be a slave to every single distraction and reaction that your ambiguous plan without standards is setting everyone up for. And that is what, when we talk about execution, we talk about overwhelm. We talk about being saturated, task saturated, and that you're doing so much stuff of which 60 to 65% of it adds no value, that you're actually creating this overwhelm and frustration yourself. It's not the external world. You can't sit there and say, oh, our campaign didn't work because,
whatever's going on.
Economy means consumers not buying. It's like, it's not true. There's always people buying. Like, so that just becomes a get out, where we don't actually look at the quality of the campaign. Did it speak to the right people? Did we target our ICP? There's always a reason that you control that is affecting your results in your business. It is not the external world. It is not the market. We work. Two of our clients that we have at Afterburner are both in the packaging business, and one just cancelled our contract because they lost $6 million last month because of tariffs. The other company is booming because they changed their supply chain straight away. Like they went into production in the US straight away, and because they did it quickly, guess what? There's no production left. So the companies that move slowly missed the surplus production. Now they've got to wait until they catch up. So that's what being a fighter pilot is.
And I feel like one of the things that happens is, but our business is different from everybody else, and it is almost, there are those who are going to move quickly and adapt quickly, and the rest are just going to be, well, our business is different. You don't understand the business, or something along those lines.
All businesses are all the same. You just got to realize it's not the business; it's the people in it. That's the game changer. And when you look at business, that's the one common denominator. I've worked with Fannie Mae, I've worked with Google, I've worked with the NBA. It's all the same stuff. They've all got to get things done, and it's not the things they're doing that are causing the problem. It's the people doing it in a way that's not very effective. So when we talk about execution, it's understanding that we live in an era where we're distracted constantly, and as human beings, it's called the amygdala hijack. It's in my next book, which is called Flawless Leadership, which comes out next year. But we talk about, to understand how to be effective as a leader, you've got to understand how the human is engineered. And the human is engineered towards survival. And a human engineered towards survival means we generally rely on our primal functions rather than our cognitive functions to survive. And if you look at that globally, once we start to remove problem solving and critical thought, we become highly emotive and reactive. So we just look at the same stuff on social media. It feeds us our biases, and we just end up believing a whole bunch of stuff without actually.
It just keeps compounding.
And it happens in business as well. You've got a whole bunch of people in there that are telling stories, right? And creating a belief system that isn't true. I call that the 3 Bs: the biases, beliefs, and behaviors that we have. So the biases are unconscious, it's the stuff that we consume. So if you're a negative leader, unconsciously everyone's becoming negative about the business. That translates into a belief, so that they don't believe they can do the work. And then that shapes the way they act and their behaviors, which becomes an excuse-based organization. And they use the excuse matrix to run a business rather than their strategy and their plan. And then finally, none of it's perfect, right? So planning is future-based, so that doesn't exist, so it's probably not going to be right. Execution, you're going to make mistakes. There's going to be things missing. So debriefing is the glue that pulls it all together. And when we debrief, it's a very simple conversation. Debriefing, it's not about blame. It's not about what we did wrong. It's about what are we going to do about it. So if you think the word debrief, that word means what am I going to do better tomorrow? That's all it means.
Yeah. Okay.
And our methodology is called OODA, like a killer whale. And the mnemonic stands for objective, result, cause, action. So when we talk about intention in the planning process, what we're talking about really is how do we take the idea that the leader has? How do we have this opportunity or this problem, right? This intention is to be good, but it's not happening. And what's not happening is we're not turning the intention into a destination. And if you think about, you said you're just in Denver, you flew back to Zurich. When you hopped on the airplane, the captain says, welcome aboard, ladies and gentlemen. But what they don't say is our goal is to get to Zurich. You'd be like,
we just hoped.
Yeah, because the minute you say the word goal, you're relying on hope, right? And
it reminds me of Turkish Airways the other day. We're landing now, inshallah.
Yeah.
Just...
No. So we get leaders to reframe it, and we unconsciously as a human being, we know that goals are nice. That it's an aspiration, whereas a destination is I must arrive. So for like a marathon runner, like you're either my intention is to run a marathon. Well, the destination is to run the Boston Marathon on this day, right?
Yeah.
And then what's my destination today? Well, my destination is I'm going to walk for 4 kilometers because I literally have done no exercise. And now our daily destination is what we call it an objective, is to just do something small that is achievable. Now, you might go out and you might walk 3 kilometers and you're cooked, right? So you would debrief that. You would say my objective was 4, my result was 3. Why did I only do 3? And typically when you start something new, it's just because you couldn't be bothered because it's new and it's hard. It's harder than I thought. So there's 2 things that happen. You either say, okay, well, so O is objective, R is result, C is the cause. What caused the shortfall, or call it curiosity if you want to get all touchy-feely about it. So there's 2 things that happen. So either 4 kilometers was too much, like it was just you, which is often what happens when we plan. We overplan and we're too optimistic. So you can say, well, I did 3. So it's not beyond the realms of possibility that tomorrow I can do 3.5. So we reset our goal. and when we talk of fighter pilots and missionization, we missionize the hours of a day, not a month, not a week, but we missionize the hours of the day. So how can I missionize that tomorrow? Or it may have been, well, I felt fine. I just couldn't be bothered because it was new, right? So I don't have the habit yet, right? So you might say, I am going to do 4 tomorrow, but this time I'm going to commit to the 4, and no matter what happens, I'm going to do it. Or you might even say, I'm going to start slower. If I did feel a bit tired, I'm going to keep my pace down a little bit. Now, the great thing about AI is you can put all of those prompts into AI and ask it to give you some suggestions. About 3 weeks ago, I was working with a big gym business, a company that has a whole bunch of gyms all over the US, and they're very sales led. They've got to get memberships, right? So we just did this exercise from the stage, and we got them to open their GPT, to put Orca in as their master prompts, to put their sales targets in, and to ask it to give 5 actions that they can take in the next week. And everyone in that room said at least 3 of the 5 was something they hadn't thought of before.
Yeah.
Just powerful.
Yeah. Super powerful, yeah. And you go away with some really good ideas and test them.
And then the last step is you take that action and then you go through the plan, brief, execute, debrief cycle again. So that action becomes part of your plan for the next day. So if you're talking about, a marathon training piece, you'll have a plan for Tuesday, of which this is one part. And because one of the things that happens when businesses do what they think is debriefing is they just create more work. And every day there's more work on top of more work on top of more work. So part of debriefing is, right, I've got to replan it, which means what do I have to shuffle around tomorrow to make this work? So you bring intentionality across the organization where people are asking themselves, well, based on what happened yesterday, what am I going to stop doing tomorrow? And in a small business or a large enterprise, there's a lot of people doing things that it's not really their job, particularly a small business where the CEO kind of ends up doing everyone's job. So part of the debriefing for them is, well, the company needs to do this action. We just debrief together. Who is going to do this? Or do we need more resources to do this? Or are we doing something that's not working? So you start to have very intentional conversations about your workflows, what people are doing, and everything just gets tighter and faster. And people actually start to truly understand what their job is, and importantly, what their job isn't.
So for the CEO or the founder who's listening at the moment, and using me as an example, I mean, I think we have something quite similar in that I've taken over Small Giants. You took over Afterburner. I have a small team. And how do I practically start and bring this in? Because the thought that comes to mind is, okay, we could get quite granular with this. We could look at down to podcast episodes and kind of take a look at them through that flex model. Is that the level we're going to? Is there a good place to sort of get this started in terms of bringing this into?
It's a great question, which is why in the next book we talk about the 3 M's, the 3 dimensions of leadership, and the first dimension is mindset. And when you debrief, what you actually create is a growth mindset. Like it's a manufactured growth mindset. Objective is mind setting to the future. Reality is mind set in its ways, like who I am and who I think I am. And then curiosity is how you unpack why you are where you are now versus where you want to be. And the action is the behavioral change. That's the thing that changed. So that's the method is the second M, and the method delivers the mindset. And we apply the method, and the third M is the moments that we apply it. So there's a people leadership moment where we use debriefing as a people leadership tool. And that's kind of the strategic. So as a CEO, you spend most of your debriefing at that level, which is to say, okay, here's the destination for the company at the end of 2026, right? That's strategic debriefing that I would suggest happens on a weekly basis, right? The second moment of leadership, we call the impact layer. So the impact layer is we have metrics around the podcast. The metrics have a quarterly target, but we also need an episodic impact as well. Like each episode needs to make an impact. So we debrief the episode, and we debrief the high level performance as well, because they're different. So the third moment is leading in the now, and that is what are we doing? What are the action based things that we're doing that we can improve? So if we look at that impact led debrief, which is the metrics of a podcast, then we debrief each podcast itself. What questions did I ask? What title did we use? What are our top trending podcasts? And again, with AI, you can just put all this in AI. You can go, here were the 20 episodes that we had. Here were the metrics of downloads per podcast. And it will say, based on what you said, the core thematic is, leadership in crisis, or what.
Do more of this.
More of this. Now, there are AI tools like Precision that actually do that for you all the time. It measures the performance of your emails, your social, and it over time tells you what's working and what's not. So you can automate that. So the answer is debrief actually becomes a way of thinking. So you approach everything with a debrief mindset, an emotional response, a lack of performance, something that's gone really well. So where we kind of just had a light bulb moment was a couple of years ago, working with a client in Boston, and me and another fighter pilot went to get a coffee. And at the cafe, there were 5 people behind the counter and 5 people in the queue, and we've been waiting for 10 minutes. And we're like, how could this organization possibly not be churning out coffees every 30 seconds? And we started debriefing. We're like, well, this person's doing that, and the orders are complicated, and we sat down and we said, what is it about fighter pilots that no matter what we do or where we go, we're always looking at everything as how you can do it a little bit better? And that's the key of debriefing.
I love it. Yeah,
that's what it is. So as a CEO,
it's building a culture of debriefing, right? Like building it into
which is a culture of growth. It's what it is. It's a growth mindset. So often CEOs are like, what are you doing? Why is it doing that? Which is the wrong way to start a conversation, the conversation should start with, hey, Jean, what are you trying to do? And that's a question which is like, what do you mean? What does good look like once you've done what you're doing today? What does good look like? And most people can't answer that question. You sit your team down and ask them, what's the key deliverable for Friday? I call it by Friday. So you see this language is what are you going to deliver by Friday? Not what are you going to do? What are you going to deliver?
Yeah.
And that gives them freedom in the doing part, right? That gives them, and when you ask them, what are you going to do by Friday, rather than tell them what they have to do by Friday, you completely flip the narrative and you create a culture where everyone in the organization starts to create their own destinations, their own objectives. And through debriefing, they'll work out a better way of doing it together, right? So that debriefing happens at those three levels: the people leadership layer, the impact layer, as well as the in the moment layer. And when we talk about leading in the now, what we're really saying is, are you making decisions based on reaction, or are you making them based on awareness? And this concept, you'll read it in the book, called situational awareness.
Yeah.
Self-awareness is part of that. But situational awareness is this holistic awareness of everything. The awareness of the effect of your words, the awareness of the results in your business, the awareness of the actions that are or are not delivering. Because it's very easy to move into react mode and just keep knee-jerking and just with no context, just constantly keep pulling levers until there's no rhythm, there's no system, there's no baseline. It's just throwing handfuls of darts at a board, and hopefully one of them, hits the bullseye, rather than one at a time. Didn't hit the bullseye. We got a double 20. What happened there? Was someone externally observing the dart thrower to be able to see the style? Like, you can debrief your children. Most people debrief children. So, do your homework. Have you done your homework? Where's the intentionality? Like, hey, how was school today? What do you want to be in the future? Want to be a racing car driver? Okay, cool. Did you do the math? The math that helps you understand how the airflow works under the floor of an F1 car. So you'll understand how the tires heat up. That's all physics. The tire compound, that's chemistry. Oh, well, okay.
Bringing that all together into, yeah.
And that's the only thing. I mean, if I didn't have fighter pilot as an ADHD kid going through school, I would probably a fentanyl zombie by now, right? But because
you had that kind of thing that was pulling you toward where you wanted to go. So
I hate chemistry, but I have to know chemistry because I need to know how jet fuel turns into propulsion, about how you have that reaction, about why you need certain chemicals inside fuel so they don't freeze, in certain environments. And that, I mean, even with all that intention, I still was only a B student, So a big part of humanity is the village model, which is do what you're told because I'm the chief, as opposed to the iterative model, the execution-based model, which is this is the work you need to do to deliver that intention.
Yeah. I mean, there was something we were talking about at the beginning of this, and just kind of, I think in the book you wrote, our world's not, or is not that different, comparing sort of that fighter pilot world to the business world. And one of the things that I feel like in the fighter pilot kind of world is you talk about putting on your flight suit, and there's almost this sort of switch in mindset into going into a mission. And I feel like in the business world at the moment, Boo, I think some of the listeners are probably thinking, but there's just this constant stream of stuff at us all the time. How do we find the time to do this debrief, or kind of step away and build that culture and build that growth culture? Because the mission never really switches off. I'm having trouble sleeping because every time, the mind's constantly going, or I just solved one problem and the next problem started. And I'm not suggesting that's not the case in a sort of in a combat zone, but it does, for many business owners, I think, feel like they're constantly in that combat zone. And you're a business owner, you're an entrepreneur. How do you?
I lose more sleep at night in the last 20 years of business than I ever did in the Air Force. I slept like a baby in the Air Force because I knew I had a highly competent team. Everyone was high trust.
Love it.
It was easy. I knew that no matter how hard the mission was, we'd get it done. Whereas in business, I'm always losing sleep because I know things are falling through the cracks. I know there's a lack of system. I know my people don't want to deliver the standard. So you don't have the culture and a business can't afford $15 million in training to become a fighter pilot, right? So to me, I lose sleep, or even though I know all this stuff, I'm operating in the human race, which is complex, right? And people say a lot of stuff that never gets done, and I'm like, where's this? Where's that? Why hasn't it been done? So through debriefing, you at least have less leaks in the bucket. Is it going to remove the sleepless nights? No. Is it going to reduce them? Yes. So when people say, "Oh, where's the time to debrief?" It's how you live. The time is there from the minute you wake up. If you have a meeting, change the title, make it a debrief. What are meetings? Mostly meetings are updating what's happened. What's debriefing?
Love it. Yeah.
Debriefing is structurally reflecting on what happened with a view to creating something new tomorrow to stop it from happening. So debriefing time is there. And the reason you're so busy is because you're not debriefing. Like if you stopped being busy, one input, just take the first input that comes in today and ask your question is, what is this input meant to deliver? What is the objective aligned to this action? And most people can't answer that question. It's just important because someone told me it was important. Because my leaders don't have a clear destination, they're reacting, they're feeding me garbage. And there's the curse of the small business owner, which is most small business owners got into business because they didn't want to work for someone else. They wanted to be the chief of their own show. So they're almost programmed with the wrong mindset from the start, because the opposite is true. As a CEO, as a leader, your job is actually to serve everybody. Like your job is to create a lot of structure. Your job is to live the structure and the standards as the model in the business for everyone else. Yeah. So a big part of this process is for a leader to shift their mindset and say, actually, I'm the one that has to be the best version of humanity in this business. And that's
so well put. Yeah.
Hard for a leader to do. Most small business owners hire people that do what they're told because that's what they want. They want people to do their big ideas. They don't want people that create stuff for themselves because they're more challenging. They put pressure on the leader to perform. They ask questions of the leader. They ask questions of the business strategy. And for a lot of business owners, I didn't hire you to question me. I hired to run a business and be the boss. So that is also, when you look at why don't companies debrief? Well, because it's going to hold you at the highest level of the company accountable, and you don't want that.
I feel like this goes back to what you were saying earlier about self-awareness. We need to be self-aware. We need to be surrounding ourselves in this kind of rankless environment, and have people who are going to challenge our ideas if we're going to get this debrief process.
Everyone in your community to put down the 5 things that they live in the business that they want everyone to duplicate and model on them, and their 5 best habits, and then put next to them what they actually do compared to that aspiration. Are they late on calls? Is their calendar chock full of meetings? Because if that's what they're doing, that's what everyone else is going to do. So it has to, and that's what. So the reason we went from flawless execution and elevated it to flawless leadership is you can have the best model in the world, but if the leader's not doing it and don't understand how important it is to be the standard, then you can have as much debriefing as you like. It's not, if the leader doesn't do it, no one's going to do it. So that nameless and rankless, that is the hardest part.
Is getting that right, yeah. Let me ask you one last question then. Something you touched on a moment ago was about freedom. What does freedom mean to you, Boo? What's freedom mean in your world?
I don't really believe in it. I don't think there is freedom. I think the pursuit, what we're looking for. I think when people say freedom, what they mean is I want the time to invest in things that are meaningful for me. For some people, that is their business. Like the freedom to run a business and to develop people and to be a mentor. But freedom isn't sitting on your ass being free to do whatever you want. I mean, that's impossible. Like there is no, whether you're spiritual or whether you're science-minded, the freedom to just do nothing does not exist. The great thing about missionization is missionization gives you the ability to be utterly focused, completely stepped up as the best version of yourself, and then the freedom to relax a little bit, the freedom to just have a fun conversation, the freedom to not. So a CEO should be impact driven, but at the same time accessible as a human being. But those two worlds shouldn't operate. We shouldn't be having fun conversations when we're talking about sales targets and role playing and talking about performance. But if we missionize that, that means we will create half an hour where we can be fun and we can be human. And by understanding the interconnection between the three leadership dimensions, the mindset, the method, and the moments, start to be more intentional with the way that you share your energy, okay? And take on energy, because being a leader can be a lot of energy out with nothing back. So for example, in the planning process, that's an opportunity for a leader to say, how would you guys do this? How would you do it? And let them go. Just sit there rather than, this is what we're going to do. This is what I need you to do. You know, I'm going to get you to do that. Does that sound like a good idea? And someone's going to go, yes, because you just told me it's a good idea, rather than say, hey, give me what's some good ideas. What have you guys seen at the coalface that we should do? So part of the freedom as a leader is the freedom to not have to do everything and be accountable for everything. There's a freedom in empowering a team to do that for you. So that in itself is, I have better sleep when I know my sales team is performing, my operations team is performing, my marketing team is performing, and they're doing it by themselves without me telling them what to do. That's to me is freedom. To get to that point is an awful lot of work.
Yeah.
You know,
I love it. I mean, I think the way that you brought that together was so good. Freedom is having those people in place that can do the things that need to be done, that move the business forward. Yeah.
And again, if you're a business owner, you're probably, because you started a business, were creative enough to think up some solutions to problems the world has. So you probably want to do more of that. And if you're bogged down in running the business instead of being the visionary for the business, I would say that's the freedom that you want. Plus, you probably want to be getting home with your family with a little bit of fuel in the tank, to sit on the floor with your kids, to play Lego, to be a mentor to your child rather than be a director. You know, and when you don't have energy as a human, you fall back into you fall back into village mode, which is do your job.
Yeah, so such a good piece of advice as well, to actually get to that point so that you can go home and there's still energy in the tank, whether it's with kids, loved ones, whatever the case is.
And it's not perfect; it's flawless.
No,
so you're not always going to show up like that. So the fact that you show up and you're like, oh, I did some of that stuff Boo mentioned, I still have nothing in the tank. That's okay. Debrief it. Like, what did you do? Something that you have control of happened there. Yeah, sure. An order may have fallen down. A disgruntled client may have come at you, but that's the result of something else. Something in the chain happened. So that's on you, because you didn't debrief it. You didn't create a culture of that. Someone didn't pick it up for you beforehand. So the fact it doesn't always work is a red flag for, damn, I've got to do it more. I've just got to debrief more. I've got to keep grinding it out. So my first,
we're too quick to give up, right? Like, instead of giving up, just keep at it, keep grinding it out.
Yeah. So the best advice I could give everyone as soon as they get off this call is go into your Microsoft or Google Calendar, change every meeting to a debrief, reduce it to 15 minutes, and bring the discipline of debriefing. So people come to that meeting with their objective, with their current results, some ideas as to why it's happened, and start using meetings as a critical thought process to drive the future, rather than trying to figure out what the hell's been going on.
Love it. Thanks. I'm going to go and test this some with our team as well. And I've been thinking, as we've been talking, to bring in those debrief moments and just, now saying change the meeting from Monday meeting or whatever it is to bringing in some debrief. I mean, we have a huddle, but essentially that huddle could be a daily debrief. And
so the way you set it up is there's intentionality around what we do. There's intentionality around what we did. So a morning huddle is more, what are we going to do? And then you reframe it in the afternoon as a debrief. If you debrief in the morning afterwards, the brain has this kind of survival thing. So at night, it recreates what happened the day before and frames it as something different. And again, that's survival, right? So the brain is really clever at making sure you wake up in the morning feeling fresh to do it again and not learn, because the learning part for the brain's not as important as the survival. So imagine if the brain didn't do that, we'd wake up every morning. I mean, we already have an 80% negative bias in our thoughts. But imagine if that 20% disappeared because the brain didn't reprogram. It's the same philosophy your police use and investigators, in that the earlier that you get a witness statement, the earlier you have reflection connected to the action, the better the quality of the memory. So debriefing, that's why you got debrief straight away. Missionize, debrief the mission. Missionize, debrief the mission. That's
so the quicker you can get to that debriefing, the better. If you're doing huddles in the morning, that's the goal for the day.
Yeah, huddle's great. Like, think of huddle as the single finger on the plasma ball. That's what a huddle is. And then the debrief is what we agreed in the huddle, what we did. If not, why not? And then because usually it'll be no, something happened that you weren't expecting. And then the thing that we weren't expecting becomes the debrief. Why weren't we expecting it? What was it? Oh, it's that same thing, it's the same way that the CRM fulfills orders. We've always got to do that little manual piece. We never got around to automating. We'll freaking automate it. By
automating
Friday,
it 1% every day. We're moving forward.
So by Friday, and I love that language, by Friday,
okay.
Automate it. By Friday, automate
by Friday. Love it.
And that's it. Don't do any other freaking job. And just do that one job by Friday. Forget everything else. It's
if you get the one done, you can move on to the next one.
There's so many ways you can apply it. It's mind-blowing. Yeah. The point is, though, don't worry about it. Just apply it to something. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Just anything that's you feel in your gut isn't as good as it could be is the trigger for a debrief.
Brilliant. Okay. I know we're probably over time, so I'm conscious of your time. Thank you so much for coming in, Boo.
Hey, thanks for listening to this week's episode of Freedom Experience. If this episode hit a nerve or got you inspired, then hit that subscribe button wherever you listen or consume your podcasts and leave us a review. All of that helps us to get in front of more entrepreneurs, to reach more purpose-driven leaders and get these conversations to them. If you want to learn more about building a great company, one that's purpose-driven, values-led, and focused on growing the next generation of leaders, then head on over to smallgiants.org. You'll find tools and virtual workshops and a community of business leaders who are putting people first. And then, if you want to dig deeper into Boo's work, which I think is phenomenal, check out the Afterburner Advantage or visit afterburner.com. And as always, all of the show notes will be down below. That's it from me. See you next time.